My closest friends and I have, for the last number of years now, had this ongoing text thread that's been titled and retitled The Future Rulers of the Star Wars Franchise, Disciples of Mr. Lucas, The Rogue Four, or my personal favorite, Jedi Babies. Titles that just declare we all love Star Wars. For me personally, really my passion for storytelling and filmmaking began when I watched the series back when I was 7 years old, and for most of my friends, their own experiences with the films are just variations of the exact same story. But what's also become readily apparent over the years is that actually each of us love this franchise for slightly different reasons, and as do all fans. For some, the Star Wars movies are their cinematic brilliance, the flawless editing of the attack on the Death Star, the iconic sound design of the lightsaber, the visual poetry of Mustafar's production design, the gorgeous cinematography from the carbon freezing chamber. And for others, Star Wars movies are their mythology, their reinterpretations of Arthurian and Greek legends, and their own unique ever-expanding history of cultures, religions, and worlds. For others, Star Wars movies are their creatures and worlds, ones that literally or figuratively get to expand their set of action figures, as well as diversify those different sandboxes that they get to play with them in. Luke in the sand, Luke in the snow, Luke in the forest, Han in the cantina, Boba Fett in the clouds, Phasma in the ruins. For others, Star Wars movies are their action set pieces. The pod race, the Hoth battle, the speeder bike chase, Darth Maul versus Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan versus Anakin, Vader versus Luke, Kylo versus Rey. For others, Star Wars movies are their charismatic and relatable characters. Anakin, Luke, and Rey, the idealistic dreamers. Han Solo, the charming scoundrel. Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan, the wise mentors. Chewie, R2, and BB-8, the faithful companions. C-3PO, the comedic relief. And of course, there are any number of other elements and the combining of different elements that makes Star Wars to so many fans. So before I come out and simply just state whether or not Rogue One was my kind of Star Wars film, let's just walk through a few of those different elements and assess how successfully Rogue One captured and presented them. To start things off, when it comes to its cinematic merits, this film, especially in its visuals, was absolutely a triumph. Director Gareth Edwards completely understood and believed in the power of the image, and its unique ability to, through color, light, and composition, actually communicate ideas, themes, and emotions. To have the evil Death Star, for example, quite literally eclipse a star right as the lead character was experiencing the darkness of hopelessness and loss was just great filmmaking. No other artistic medium can juxtapose images in that way, making both of them that much more impactful. And this happened time and again, Edwards presenting images that weren't just cool, but narratively appropriate, telling the story in visual terms and communicating its themes and ideas with cinematic vocabulary. Additionally, there was no shortage of gorgeous new creatures, worlds, and ship designs to just feast our eyes upon, and of course, add to our toy collections. Edwards and his team understood that one of the reasons that first-time viewers fall in love with Star Wars is because they are fresh and new, full of varied creatures, characters, and vehicle designs. And even when this film's production design appropriately copied the original 3 Star Wars films, or the diversity and quantity of planets harkened back to the prequels, the way that everything was photographed was so distinctly different than anything we've seen in Star Wars before. We've seen the Death Star, for example, but we've never seen it look and feel this massive and threatening. Rogue One also did a really solid job at expanding the mythology of a galaxy far, far away, which was made all the more impressive as its story was sandwiched right between 2 pre-existing films, Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Even so, worlds like Jeddah, which very appropriately possessed design elements similar to the real-life Jerusalem, really beautifully continued to broaden our understanding of something like the Force and how different cultures interact with it. And there were indeed creative and exciting battles aplenty in this film, especially in the third act. We were just treated to these images that felt both familiar, but also brand new. We had, for example, seen stormtroopers engage in World War II style action, but never in a South Pacific setting. And yes, of course we've seen Star Destroyers, but let's just say we've never seen them do that before. And finally, the characters. So, on one hand, did we in Rogue One find an idealistic dreamer, a charming scoundrel, a wise mentor, a faithful companion, and the comedic relief? Yes. Yes, we did. But were any of those characters really given the moments or beats to earn those titles and become, in our eyes, living, breathing humans? Or did they simply remain those two-dimensional archetypes throughout? sculpted by a room full of writers too impatient to pause, too insecure to breathe, or too unsure to focus? I would argue, unfortunately, yes. Don't get me wrong, Felicity Jones really did make the most of the few small moments that she was given to communicate who Jin was and what drove her. But again, just wasn't ever given the needed space to really make me believe in, or relate to, that struggle. And the changes of heart that Diego Luna's Cassian Andor underwent ever felt contrived and really guided by a writer's pen versus an actual human's conscience. Which was tough because about 15 minutes into the film, after being introduced to both of those characters, I was just compelled to lean over and whisper to my wife, I'm really enjoying it so far. But unfortunately, the seeds that were sown in those first few scenes, seeds that had begun to form an empathetic connection between me and the lead characters, again, just weren't ever given the space to grow and blossom. Sure, a few of the right boxes were checked along the way, boxes that a trained writer knows should, in concept, create a compelling character, but that's all it ever really felt like. A writer checking boxes versus humans making believable decisions. Which, in my eyes, was Rogue One's greatest flaw, because the human element, for me anyways, has always been an integral part of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Since that very first film, having been inspired by Japanese cinema, Lucas sought to very intentionally create a galaxy that felt foreign and so far removed from our own, culturally, technologically, and geographically, but populate that place with individuals that we could see ourselves in. In the end, this was a Star Wars film for Star Wars aficionados, and I mean that in no way as a dig. You could just tell that every inch of this story had been meticulously considered to ensure that it would perfectly line up with what had occurred in the prequels, as well as what occurs in the originals, even going so far as to answer certain gripes and complaints that many diehard fans had had with those films for years. Nonetheless, as a narrative, this film never really found its own feet, its characters ever feeling like they found themselves in either the epilogue for Episode 3 or the prologue for Episode 4, rather than a full, significant story of their own. And for all of these reasons, I will give Rogue One, a Star Wars story, a 3.5 out of 5, and a heart, because I love Star Wars, and this film was a feast for the eyes, and answered questions and presented images that I had wanted answered and wanted to see for years. Those are my thoughts anyways on the film. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film, so definitely comment below and let me know. I would really appreciate, actually, if you guys would rank for me the 8 theatrical releases that we've gotten. The live action films. You can forget about the animated Clone Wars film if you want to. If you want to include that, go for it. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.